Do you remember where you were when you first heard that he committed suicide?
Yes, yeah. Jaclyn Smith and I were going to go to Aspen to go skiing. We were somewhere up there. And we got off the plane in Denver. And as we were getting off the plane, they were saying, "Are you Roger Davis? Are you Roger Davis? Are you?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm Roger Davis." He goes, "You have an emergency phone call." So I go to the phone, and there's Roy on the phone. He says, "Roger, it's Roy, and there's a plane ready to take you back. You've got to go straight to wardrobe. You've got to do this. Pete has shot himself, and you've got to replace him, okay?" And I said, naturally, I said, "Well, when's he going to be back on?" Yeah. And he goes, huge hesitation. He goes, "He's not, Roger. He's dead."
Hi, I'm RJ Word. I'm here with my dad, and we've started a podcast.
So we want you to tune into it. It's going to be dropping every Monday, a new episode. They'll be longer, and it's audio only, so I don't have to diet anymore, all right? But right now, let's get into the video, A Word on Westerns. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, I'm going to roll him out of here now.
Hi, I'm Rob Word. Welcome to A Word on Westerns, and I am very excited today because I have a guest whose voice makes mine sound awful. He has a mellifluous voice and a great stature. He was the voiceover artist in ALIAS Smith and Jones, and then you know what? He became Hannibal Jones.
Hayes.
I'm sorry, you can hear his voice now. It's Roger Davis, it's Hannibal Heyes.
Hannibal Heyes and Kid Curry, the two most successful outlaws in the history of the West. But in all the trains and banks we robbed, we never shot anybody. This made us very popular with everyone but the railroads and the banks. Hannibal Heyes and Kid Curry, alias Smith and Jones.
Now you've heard it. Is that great? Roger, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. You have a lovely house. I love Art Deco. I'm really love your paintings.
You're very kind.
I'm jealous of the fact that you're not that much younger than I am and you have no wrinkles. Whoa, boy. The other day, my ex-wife is out visiting, having some dental work done.
How many times have you been married? Wait a minute.
Oh, gosh, you're going to embarrass me right off the bat. Well, I've been married. My first wife was Jaclyn Smith, okay? Known as, when I knew her, she was Ellen Smith, Jaclyn Ellen Smith. And we were married really before Charlie's Angels. So, and my last wife was a lawyer, and we were married, well, it's really how long we've been unmarried, which is about 7 or 8 years now. She was going to the airport this morning, and her last thing she said was, "Don't overtalk." And I go, "But it's an interview." How do you do that? I mean, so anyway.
Empire was an hour-long show starring Richard Egan, Terry Moore, Ryan O'Neal, and Charles Bronson, and it only lasted maybe 39 episodes, and then it was canceled, but they kept the same time slot and made it a half-hour show, and you were a regular on that.
Yes, and Bronson was to be a regular, but he had a disagreement with Richard Egan over something. I can't remember. Maybe I do remember. I think Bronson was maybe chewing tobacco, okay? Something, or maybe it was just gum. And Egan said, "I need you to stop that. That's really bothering me." And you know, Bronson said, "Can't you just go on? I mean, what I mean, don't you ever have a conversation and people are chewing gum or people, whatever they're doing, and smoking a cigarette?" And he goes, "Yeah, but understand, it's my show and I would like you to, and it was a bad moment. And Bronson goes, "You're right." And he just walked off. And then there was this incident where Ryan O'Neal got into it with the head of the studio. And I got this call from the casting lady. I was up for Rodney Harrington in Peyton Place.
Is that the role that Ryan O'Neal took?
Well, get this one. So that night, I told Millie and everybody, was just a bird in the hand, you know, and so we want you to do this, we want you to do this. So there was a club called the Daisy over off Rodeo or in Beverly Hills. And that night, I knew that Ryan would be there. So I talked to him. I told him that I'd been over there, and because I didn't want to step on any toes. I later had to experience this when I did Alias Smith and Jones, which was far more difficult. But I told him, and he said, "Oh, I think it's great. You know, do it. I don't want it. I don't want to do it." Okay, so I say, well, you probably should go out and see them for Rodney Harrington on Peyton Place, because if I'm going to do this, that's going to be open. Oh man, what a
But you never know.
That's correct. I remember once I was offered a show called Love on a Rooftop, and
With Pete Duel.
Pete Duel, yes, and Pete Duel and I, our paths crossed a number of times. The producer was a guy named Jerry Davis, and I'd tested, and he took me to lunch and he said, "You've got to do this. This show will be on 5 years with you. This is Barefoot in the Park. Didn't you see it?" And I go, "No, I was doing a show off Broadway that was a really hit show, and I didn't get to see it." He goes, "What's that?" And I said, "It was McBird. It was a political play." And and I hadn't seen Barefoot in the Park, okay? But I did the test. And so, again, I chose From Here to Eternity to play the Montgomery Clift role. Everybody tested for that. Everybody tested, okay? Including Nicholson and you know, who's the Dennis Hopper, James Franciscus, Warren Beatty. Everybody tested for it. And so the plum role was the Montgomery Clift role, and I got it. So I turned down Love on a Rooftop. I go to Hawaii. I've got Darren McGavin, who's going to play Warden, and I've got Sally Kellerman, who's going to play the Deborah Carr role. And Sally has my hand, and we're on the beach in front of the Royal Hawaiian, and we're looking out at the sunset, and Sally says, "You know, we have to make the worst pilot ever made for this not to sell." That's the end of the story. That's it. Okay.
So you ended up taking REDIGO, and Ryan went on to a great success in Peyton Place.
Then I wound up taking From Here to Eternity, didn't do. So all those didn't do's. Actors have low. Everybody has.
But at least it aired, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It aired as a
TV movie.
As a TV movie. It did quite well, but it doesn't matter. The show that they went with was Peyton Place, not From Here to Eternity.
But you say your paths crossed multiple times with Pete Duel.
The next time they crossed was a little surf movie called Ride the Wild Surf.
That's with Tab Hunter and Peter Brown,
Jim Mitchum,
Shelley Fabre.
Shelley Fabre, Barbara Eden.
Yes, early Barbara Eden, yes.
So we went to Hawaii to do 2 weeks in Hawaii, but the director and his wife, it's hard to imagine, but they got in an argument. She took the script, ran off. I don't know where they found her, but we sat for a month. The greatest time in the world, just hanging out in Hawaii, waiting to get the script back so we could start shooting. Pete Duel was to do that with me, but Pete wasn't a guy who did, shirt off. He wasn't that kind of an actor.
They even had Fabian take his shirt off in that, too.
Yeah. If you couldn't take your shirt off, for a
surfing movie,
you have a certain surfy kind of look.
Sure.
I remember thinking when I went under contract to Warner Brothers, Dick Donner thought I was going to be a young Dab Hunter. So I'm driving into Honolulu. One day I had an old Woody station wagon, and we had these houses on the North Shore, literally between Haleiwa and the pipeline, okay? And in those days, I mean, they were, summer cottages. They all screened in, everything. So 2 doors away to have Hunter's place was, and I saw that his car was still there because he had a fancy new convertible. I had this old stupid Woody.
Yeah,
and,
but the Woody's cooler.
Yeah, yes, but it wasn't running. So I go over and I said, could I get a ride into town? So we're driving into town, and he's got the top down, and I said, Tab, I got under contract to Warner Brothers because they thought that I was going to be a young Tab Hunter. And he's driving, and he goes just like this. Ready? It was the greatest look.
Did he keep speaking to you during the shoot?
It was, oh yeah, yes. In fact, we have a scene together, and I have a picture of it here on the cell phone, which, but he was 36 years old, and he was the only person who was guaranteed to get carded when we went into a bar, okay? All of the rest of us. And he'd come up to the bar, and they'd go, got to see your ID. And none of us, they would ask us for ID, and we really were 21.
When you were at Warner Brothers, is that where you met Roy Huggins?
It's interesting. Roy, even though he did 77 Sunset Strip, and my
Maverick and Fugitive,
Rockford
Files.
Yes, but not then. Then he was doing 77 Sunset Strip. It was at Maine
and Maverick
and Maverick, of course, Maverick. But I didn't do a Maverick. Didn't do a 77 Sunset Strip. Did the show that I was doing, and no, I never did a Maverick.
But did you meet Roy back there at Warner?
But I did do the Rockford Files. I was the guest star in the opening show of the
That's
Rockford.
much later in your career.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I didn't meet Roy until the Young Country.
That wasn't Warner Brothers. That was Universal.
Universal.
Wasn't it? And Roy not only wrote that, he directed it. He'd only directed one movie, Hangman's Knot, with Randolph Scott. And he did a fabulous job with that. I wonder why he never directed again, but he directed you.
Yes, because...
And Pete Duel. You and Pete Duel both in that.
Yes, but Pete was the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went in, Roy saw me on a commercial. I had a Canada Dry commercial, and up over 2 parties. And Lauren Hutton was the girl with me. And in this thing, she comes up over my shoulder, and at the end I say, which party would you choose? Okay? And she's cuddling up next to me. And, and I go, And, just one of those little moments. And Roy saw that, caught the moment, caught the little moment. And I got a call from my agent, who was a guy named Stark Hesseltine, who had started Peppard, Redford, all kinds of people. He was a great agent. And he called me and he said, Roy Huggins. I go, Roy Huggins, how's that for me? Maverick, Roger, Maverick. And I said, what does he want? He wants you to fly out to talk to him about a show. So I flew out the next day. I go into his office, talked to him for about 15 minutes, and he said, this is the way Roy was. That's it. I made up my mind. Hold on a second. Dials up. Pete, this is Roy. Could you come over to my office? Are you here on the lot? Great. Come over to my office right away. So Pete comes over to the office, and Roy was very direct. He said, Pete, Roger here, I want to play Stephen Foster Moody. I know that you're playing it, but I'm going to switch and you'll take Honest John Smith. And Pete went just like this. He goes, okay, yeah, Roger will be writer for that than I will. Wow.
And this is the first time you met?
Well, Pete knew me, you know, and he knew that he got Love on a Rooftop and I didn't get, but he was just really, and so we walk out that day and I said, man, Pete, that was really generous of you. I thought you'd flip out, okay? And he goes, no, they're both great roles.
Right.
I'm more Honest John Smith than you are, and you're more, okay. So we did it. We had a great time. We had a great time. And the girl in it was...
Joan Hackett.
Thank you. You must have that written down. You're not that good. You're not,
I'm pretty damn good, though. Okay. Ask anybody.
Okay.
Am I okay?
Yeah,
Do I come up with the right things?
Yes. And
but this is a great.
Yeah.
I love hearing these stories,
well,
Roger. So Joan Hackett was one of the best actresses ever.
Yes, and we had when they did the audience thing where the audience, they can see those dials and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember Roy coming up to me afterwards, and he said, "I wish you could have seen the dials, Roger. It's really something when an actor starts out, they didn't know you at all, and it just goes right to the last scene, higher and higher, and the last scene it just whacks." And it was one of those rare moments where Joan Hackett and I, she's now got the money. We're all chasing the McGilla, the $38,000.
It's a con job.
Yes. And so now she gets the money, and I'm after her, and I've got Pete tied up back in a hotel room, okay? And I remember ad-libbing when I left this hotel room, and Pete's all tied up, and he goes, and so I go out, and I take the thing out of his mouth, and he goes, "Don't leave me." And I go, "What?" I step it back and say, all he says is, "Don't leave me." So I get to the door and I turn back and I said, and this was something my dad used to say, one of his favorite sayings. I said, "Hey, I hate to do this, but you know what my old daddy used to say? I love you when your money's gone, but I can't be with you." And that is something that Dad used to always say.
Roy Huggins' scripts, though, were
they were
good.
great.
Just light,
yes.
con job, just like Maverick. And so this was, he wanted to do it.
But that particular day, the script girl said, "Wait, that wasn't in the script. Roy, do you like that?" And Roy said, "Yeah, I like that. I wish I'd written it. Yeah, we're gonna keep that in." And so at the end, Joan and I have this scene where she's now got the $38,000. But she's reading something, and she looks up, and there I am across from her. And she goes, "Mr. Moody, how did you get here?" And I go, "It's just a long story." And she goes, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to St. Louis." I go, "Yeah? Well, you were going to St. Louis, but we're going to get off at the next stop, and I'm going to take the $38,000. And she goes, "Oh, Mr. Moody, you could have a great time with me in St. Louis." And I go, "Well, what do you have in mind?" And she says, "You can take half the $38,000. And I go, "Really?" Because now we don't know whose it is. And so she counts it out to me, okay? And I count it and I go, "This is $1,000 short." And then up comes Pete. "Oh, you've got my money," he says. And we go, and they freeze, okay? That's the end of the show. And it would have been a great show with the three of us, okay? But Universal had a time slot for a Western with Clint Walker. And
Kodiak.
yeah, yes. And the network, I forget the guy's name, but you'll know. He had that he's a huge producer, he's still around. He had that show where they'd sell stuff. Well, anyway, he was the head of the studio, and he said, "Roy, I told you, this show is great." It tied for the highest rated movie of the week of the year. And he said, "I like Roger Davis, like the show, like the idea of the three people. Wonderful. But we have a time slot for Clint Walker, okay? There is no time slot for this show." So we didn't get on the air. And the next season, half mid-season, this Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid had come on, and what's his name who produced it, which Glenn Larson had an idea. And instead of using me, he thought, well, I don't want to do Roy's thing. I wanted my own. and they had a contract player.
So Glenn Larson had watched the success of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and he says, what can I do that's slightly different for TV, which is what he has made a career out of doing successfully.
McLeod was nothing, you know.
It was Coogan's Bluff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Magnum PI. They were all generically interesting and like movies.
With great leading men.
Yeah.
And Pete Duel was terrific, but it's too bad you didn't
it would have been great
get in
together.
that. But how did you end up doing the voiceover at the beginning? Was that like well, poor Roger, he didn't get the part, let's let him do it?
No. Roy said, I've got to have you as the voiceover. I've got to have you do this. And I said, yeah, Roy, boy, it bothers me a little bit. He goes, no, I'm going to write one for you. And he wrote Smiler with a Gun for me.
Which was a terrific part. That's one of the best episodes. That almost could have spun off into another show.
You ready?
Ace, I think I just saved myself $5. Let's hope he isn't that good at poker.
It would have spun off into a really good show, and that's the breaks of the game, you know. I had been to Pete's house maybe a week before that happened, and what he thought was that the show was keeping him down and that he wanted to have a movie career.
Didn't most actors at that time look down on television and want to be in features?
Sure.
Even though he's in a hit show.
Absolutely. When Young Country ran, Stark Hesseltine in New York, that big agent that I told you was my agent, calls me and he says, I've got a first-class ticket. You're going to fly back to meet, do you know Bob Fosse? And I said, Bob Fosse wants to meet me? And he goes, yeah, he wants to meet you about starring in a movie for him. So I go back and I sit down, and I remember that I'd gotten an orange down below. His office was right across from City Center. And I went up like the third floor, and I had bought at this fruit stand down below an orange, and I had it in my hand. And he said, oh man, can I have half of that when I walked in? And I said, sure, and I started opening up. And he says, saw that show you did, the Western, really, and loved it. And I go, and I'm like, I said, well, I have to take this in for a moment, Mr. Fosse. I just need to tell you that in 1948, my mother got a Roadmaster black four-holder Buick, and we drove it up on a trip to New York City, and I went to see you at City Center playing Pal Joey, and I was so impressed with you that I went home at 10 years old and bought tap shoes. And he said, he just died laughing, and he said, do you dance? And I said, oh, I wish I did. It was a little late to start tap at 10. And everybody was, and he goes, you're right, I started at 4.
Wow.
And that's true. Most people who really play the piano, they start really early, starting to learn tap at 10. Well, if you have that wonderful thing to be, the other day I saw Jerry Lewis on a telethon tap dance. Oh my Lord, this guy he was great.
All those guys, like Crosby and Sinatra and Dean Martin, they all could dance and sing.
Yes.
And Jerry could be crazy.
Right.
So let's get back to Pete Duel for a minute, because you went and
Am I kind of all over the place?
Well, I'm just going to guide you in a pleasant way, I hope, to talk about Pete, because you went back and you were good friends, and you could sense that there was something wrong. He was depressed because of his career, which was a successful television actor.
I think he watched the show that night, and he was just, and it was New Year's Eve. I think it was New Year's Eve. And I don't think that was the first time. I don't my memory is not perfect, but on this score. But I know that I was friendly with Jeff until he died here recently, and I knew his sister Pam, but Pete was without gall. He had no gall. He had no ego, in that kind of ego that is challenged by other people, that's bothered, that's competitive in that awful way that actors can be. Anybody can be. Okay, I've got a kid who works for me. He's a great kid, but he's one of those. He's got to make the decision. He's got to feel like he made the decision. Okay,
but Pete just wasn't like that
Pete
at all.
was
well, like when
not.
you said he took the one part and gave you the other. Just okay, that'll work. On screen, he just came across as a guy you'd want to hang out with.
Oh, there were times when, now remember, I'm doing my first big lead and being introduced, even though I'd done a lot of things. It was still, I was being introduced as the lead in a show. So I remember at least 5 times during this, Pete had a serious line to deliver to me. And he was off camera, and I would say, Pete, when you do the line, just smile big, okay? It will really help me, because you're to be down one way, I'm to be up, but if you go down, it might take me down. And he goes, oh, no problem. And I swear, he'd be saying something really mean and awful, you know, down, different, and whatever, and he'd be going, and it would just take me right up. And when we'd finish, he'd look at me and he'd go,
well, that's what you want in an acting partner.
Yes, yeah. What he was saying was, it was great, okay? And then I had more confidence and more confidence.
Do you remember where you were when you first heard that he committed suicide?
Yes, yeah. I was getting off, Jaclyn Smith and I were going to go to Aspen to go skiing. We were somewhere up there. And we got off the plane in Denver. And as we were getting off the plane, they were saying, are you Roger Davis? Are you Roger Davis? Are you? And I go, yeah, I'm Roger Davis. He goes, you have an emergency phone call. So I go to the phone, and there's Roy on the phone. He says, Roger, it's Roy, and you've got to come back. What are you doing? And I said, well, Ellen and I are going to go skiing, or something like that. I don't ski very well. We're going to go. And he said, no, you've got to come straight back. There's a plane ready to take you back. You've got to go straight to wardrobe. You've got to do this. Pete has shot himself, and you've got to replace him, okay? And I said, naturally, well, when's he going to be back on? And he goes, huge hesitation. He goes, he's not, Roger, he's dead. And I go, whoa, man. And I said, replace him? Well, Roy, this is a big decision. How are you going to make this transition? I mean, what Pete, oh, Roy, come on, I can't come back. And when do you want to do this? Give me a week, and there are going to be a few, this guy's my friend. So I go straight to wardrobe. They're all, you got to do it. We've got to be shooting Monday. And the one thing I didn't do was talk to Ben Murphy. The one thing I didn't do was say, hey, you okay with this? This is, so we just started in Monday morning. I had his dressing room. I can remember his clothes were there. Pack of GALLANT cigarettes was wadded up on it was just like, where was Pete? And I was there. And and we just started the scene. And I remember I'd grown a mustache for another show. And so I had the mustache on. And Roy said, wait, the second scene you'll shave the mustache. Give us something to go to. And people not going to be used to you the first scene. So keep the mustache. So in the second scene, Murphy comes in, I'm shaving, and he says, you're cutting off your mustache. Okay? Now, Roy had come to me and said, everybody saw it in the dailies. They think it makes you look sinister. So I ad-libbed the line, and I said, yeah, I know. Everybody thinks it makes me look sinister. Okay? And but was it easy for Ben? No, it was not easy for him at all. I don't think we are friends now.
Did you ever discuss it like you are now to say, I
No.
didn't
No.
say something and I should have?
No, we went through the whole show pretty much in
Because you finished off that season and then started a third season.
Right.
So what was the relationship between you and Ben like during that time?
Not much. Not much. It was just two actors, and I tried to get the rapport. I tried, but I think he was fairly resistant to it. In fact, about, I don't know, a couple of years ago in Malibu, he came up behind me. I'm at the bar at a restaurant having dinner because the restaurant was packed. And so I'm right inside the door and I feel his arms go around me and he says, "Bet you don't know who this is." And I go, "It's Ben and I know you anywhere." And he turns around and he goes, How'd you figure that? You haven't talked to me in 5 years. And I said, Ben, come on. And then we start talking and he said, this is exactly what he said. Roger, had I known that was the high point of my career, I would have been nicer to you. Mm. Mm. And of course, that's a very telling remark anyway. But Ben went on to do many shows. In fact, the next show that he did was a show called Hickok. And Roy calls me and he says, Roger, I want you to narrate the show. And I go, Roy, when Ben hears me narrating this show, he's not going to like it, okay? And he goes, well, it's my decision, Roger, and you're going to narrate the show. So I was like another character. It's interesting, right now in London, I'm narrating a movie.
Roger, I love hearing these stories, and you're bringing so much heart and film history for us all, and it's much appreciated. I wish I'd had you on when we were at the Autry with an audience, because you would have had them roaring with laughter, but I hope everybody out there has been enjoying Roger Davis. I know I have. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. I feel like I'm very honored that you had me.
You're very kind. So thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching the show. Our podcast is every Monday.
Every Monday a new one drops. Isn't it up all the time then? And you can access it anytime.
You can access it anytime wherever you find your podcasts or on our new channel, A Word on Westerns podcast.
Sounds good to me.
The links are... I'm going to put it over his face.
He did graduate too.
Click here.